For Comedy Hype News, I'm Tatiana LaJoy. The media does a great job at influencing our thoughts subconsciously. Whether it's film, TV, print, or video games, they all have something to say about everyday life and human behavior. Oftentimes, we see or hear things in the media that help sway our own opinions, and we carry those opinions out in the real world. Relationships, whether they be positive or negative, have been displayed in media and art since the beginning of time. In terms of TV and movies, we grew up watching Martin and Gina as relationship goals, but a closer look made us realize that the relationship was flawed. Mostly Martin's fault. Of course, they weren't the only ones guilty of this. Although these relationships are glamorized, they are actually very problematic, revealing misogynistic, narcissistic, insecure, and toxic behavior. We here at Comedy Hype revisited the series and decided to take a look at their relationship. How toxic are Nikki Parker and Professor Oglevee?
So for me, I personally did not see Nikki Parker and Professor Oglevee's relationship as toxic. I think that there may be some moments where we can pull out toxicity, but I think when we talk about toxic relationships, it's important to kind of consider the whole relationship and not just certain aspects of it. And so I think that's what happens a lot, is like we can pull out certain examples of different things that may fall under the category of toxic, and so we'll label it as such. But I kind of disagreed here, and I will tell you the main reason I disagreed that this was a toxic relationship is because they were not really in a relationship. It was very much, it was a one-way relationship where she was very much interested in him and he was not. So I would say that it wasn't toxic because he was very clear on not being interested in her out of the gate. He made his stance very clear. There was no confusion around it. He let her know that, there wasn't really a chance, and she on her own decided to pursue that anyway. So I see it less of a toxic relationship and more as in maybe her having some unhealthy behaviors. So that would be my main thing, is that, I think when people are clear with us, we have the decision of whether or not to pursue or what to do with that information. And I think when people are clear with us and they are telling us what it is that they want, we can't necessarily label them as toxic because it does not coincide with the things that we're doing and what we're trying to get to.
Hey, Professor. I bet you $5 you didn't think you'd see me again today.
There you go.
The term toxic relationships was coined by Lillian Glass, a California-based communication and psychology expert. In her book, Toxic People, she defines it as any relationship between people who don't support each other, where there is conflict and one seems to undermine the other, where there's competition, where there's disrespect and a lack of cohesiveness. In many cases, indications of a toxic relationship are subtle. Fuller says you cross the line when you're not your individual self anymore and you're giving everything to your partner. A lot of times, a person won't realize it's unhealthy because they're so used to it. While every relationship has its ups and downs, a toxic relationship is when the negative moments outweigh the positive.
I know that later in the season they did end up getting together. And so some people may have saw his back and forth as being toxic. I know that she moved on, she got into another relationship, and at that point he decided that, no, I think I want to do this, and so he started to pursue her. And then once they got together, I think he broke up with her. He no longer wanted to be with her. So he kind of did the back and forth thing, and I think that people see that as toxic, but I honestly think that that is just a part of human behavior, and that is oftentimes what relationships look like if we're honest. I think that it's very seldom that we see two people who automatically, instantly are sure about how they feel for one another and they just go. I think a lot of times we have that pull where we're not exactly sure, and I think that that's okay. Sometimes we need the time and the space to kind of figure out exactly what it is that we want. And I feel like it's only a problem if it's a problem for the other person.
Jealousy is defined as a defensive reaction to a perceived threat to a valued relationship. Feelings of insecurity, fear, anger, resentment, and inadequacy are all found in jealousy. Towards the end of the second season, Nikki begins a relationship with one of the professor's old friends, Kenny Davis. It's Professor Oglevee who gladly gives Kenny permission to pursue Nikki and take her off his hands. When the two grow feelings for each other, Nikki takes her attention off the professor, who then becomes jealous of her relationship, despite him dating another woman. Nikki now has a man that finally treats her the way she's supposed to be treated. Nevertheless, she can't stop thinking about the professor. The professor spies on Nikki and Kenny through their balcony, injuring himself in the process. He confesses his love for Nikki multiple times, including getting Brian McKnight to lip sync for him. However, that wasn't enough, as Nikki continues to ignore his advances. In the end, Miss Parker couldn't deny her love for the professor and dumped Kenny, only to have the professor reject her by saying that he came to his senses and it was all a hoax.
Jealousy, yes. So jealousy, I think, is also a normal part of being in a relationship. Like, you're gonna have insecurity, you're gonna have fear, you're gonna have anger. All of that part is, again, it's human behavior, and it's what we do with that jealousy.
Could you please tell the courtroom how much you really love me?
Your Honor, I object.
No further questions, Your Honor. It is obvious this witness is head over heels in love with me.
Your Honor, I beg you strike that from the record.
Take your seat, sir.
No,
you better go on now.
Throughout the series, Nikki suffered from a delusional hope for change. She thought that the professor would eventually come around and realize that he loved her all along, which he did in this instance, but it would have been too late for me. Nikki fell into the same exact behavior towards the end of the series. Why does Nikki continue to chase after the professor when he's shown time and time again that he doesn't really love her? Maybe she sees the potential that Professor Oglevee can provide. In the 5th and final season of The Parkers, Nikki began dating a man named Johnny. Johnny had a real connection with Nikki right from the jump and treated her like a queen. In the series finale, they eventually made it down the aisle where Professor Oglevee crashed the wedding and confessed his love for Nikki. After realizing that Nikki would be gone for good if she married Johnny, he proposed to her at the wedding. She accepted his proposal, saying that he was her soulmate. Many viewers were upset that Nikki decided to marry Professor Oglevee. He had done nothing but embarrass and reject her for years while Johnny was a great man to her. This was Nikki Parker falling into comfortable and familiar territory once again. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I think it's safe to say Nikki Parker was insane.
I think we have to be careful with the term delusional, because it's like, just because a path doesn't look the way that we would want it to look, or it's not the same path that someone else would take, it doesn't necessarily make it a delusional path. And so they ended up married. Maybe she knew that, that was written for them. Maybe she felt very strongly that he was her soulmate. And the fact that it worked out and they ended up together tells me that it wasn't delusional at all.
According to Psychology Today, healthy relationships should include both giving to your partner and receiving from your partner. Both parties should work together to provide support, encouragement, and compassion when faced with challenges, sadness, or other problems. When it came to Nikki and the professor, Nikki gave her all, but no one was pouring into her cup. In the 3rd season episode, A Knockout x2, Nikki competes in a wrestling match against another woman who is trying to blackmail the professor into sleeping with her. Nikki came to the professor's rescue once again. The professor was the referee at the wrestling match and was supporting Nikki until she started sweet-talking him during the fight. He switched teams instantly and told the other woman to knock her out. The woman accidentally knocks out the professor, which causes Nikki to get a surge of energy and knock her out. Once again, Nikki's demented loyalty saves the professor, who shows no gratitude or affection towards the one woman who is always there for him. That is, until she wants to be with someone else.
Absolutely. So that is where I would agree. I'm never into all given and no take. I believe in reciprocity in any relationship. I think that for sure there needs to be a give and take from both people. But if we look at it another way, it's like give and take of what? Whatever she was getting from him, maybe she felt like that was enough, right? So my give and take may be different. Maybe you give of time, I give of money, right? That's a give and take. It just looks differently. And so, kind of looking in on it, it looked like all give and no take, but maybe Nikki was getting something from it that the rest of us just couldn't see. Or maybe she got a need from it that may not be like our typical need or something that the next person would consider.
Mama, your prayers have been answered. Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Jesus.
The journey to having a successful, healthy relationship is a long, hard-fought road. Because Kim Parker never had a good example on how to be a part of a healthy relationship, she enacts the same behavior as her mother. We see how Nikki acts, which most likely suggests she never had a good example either. It's a continuous cycle that needs to be interrupted. Jealousy, delusion, and lack of reciprocity are just a few components that make up a toxic relationship. And unfortunately, all of these qualities were found in the relationship between Professor Oglevee and Nikki Parker, thus making it an unhealthy and dysfunctional relationship. What do you guys think? Is the relationship between Nikki Parker and the professor toxic, or is it all for the fun of entertainment? Let us know in the comments. Stay up to date with the latest news and comedy by subscribing here to our YouTube channel. Follow Comedy Hype across all social media and look out for original content on our new streaming service at comedyhype.com. For Comedy Hype News, I'm Tatiana LaJoy.